Okay, Reddit, I need a serious reality check because I'm losing my mind, and I need to know if I'm the monster in this story or if he is. My boyfriend of 3 years, Miles, is in a deeply committed, long term relationship with his goddamn consulting job. I'm just the woman who lives in his apartment and occasionally reminds him to eat something that isn't delivered in a cardboard box. For months, I've felt like I'm constantly fighting for scraps of his attention against a legion of spreadsheets and urgent client calls that always seem to happen at 9 p.m. on a Friday. I'm not asking for the world. I'm not demanding lavish trips or constant attention. I just want to feel like I'm more important than a PowerPoint deck. Last Saturday was supposed to be our date night, a promise he made after bailing on my birthday drinks. I bought a new dress, I made reservations, and where was Miles? Pacing our living room, barking into his AirPods about optimizing synergy or some other corporate nonsense. He didn't even notice the dress. So last week I did something. Maybe it was stupid, okay, I can admit it was a little dramatic, but I was desperate. I felt like a ghost in my own home. I just wanted to shake him to make him look up from his laptop and actually see me. I wanted to create a situation where he would, for once, realize what was truly important, what he stood to lose. I thought it would be this big, dramatic movie moment where he'd finally get it. And his reaction, he didn't yell, he didn't even get angry, he just humiliated me. In the coldest, most clinical and dismissive way I could have ever imagined. He looked at me not like his girlfriend, but like an annoying problem to be solved. He made me feel like a stupid, insignificant child throwing a tantrum. Now he's gone silent, treating me like I'm some kind of unhinged monster, but he's the one who pushed me to this point with his constant neglect. He's the one who made me feel invisible in my own relationship. So honestly, am I the asshole for just trying to get my boyfriend to finally pay attention to me? This whole nightmare started a few months ago when Miles's firm landed a massive project. He called it the White Whale, the kind of career-defining deal that would put him on the partner track before 30. In the beginning, I was his biggest cheerleader. I brought him coffee during late nights, I listened to him vent about difficult clients, and I told him how proud I was. But soon, the project wasn't just a part of his life, it became his entire life. Our life. Our anniversary dinner was the first major casualty. We were at a beautiful Italian restaurant, the kind you have to book weeks in advance. In the middle of my story about a funny incident at work, his phone buzzed, and then it buzzed again. And again, he spent the next 20 minutes typing furiously under the table, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of his screen. I just sat there, watching the candle burn down, feeling like a prop in his much more important life. He apologized, of course, with that distracted, "Sorry, babe, this is just crazy right now" tone that had become the soundtrack to our relationship. Then came the canceled weekend trip to the coast. We had it planned for months. A little bed and breakfast, walks on the beach, no laptops allowed. The night before we were supposed to leave, he came home looking pale and defeated. The client moved up the deadline, he announced, not even making eye contact as he dropped his briefcase by the door. I have to work all weekend. There was no discussion, no asking how I felt, it was just a fact. I didn't scream. I just quietly unpacked my suitcase, the silence in the apartment feeling heavier than any argument. Meanwhile, my Instagram feed was a minefield. My best friend Kira's boyfriend had just surprised her with a trip to Paris. Another friend was posting pictures from a cozy cabin weekend, her partner beaming beside her. They all looked so seen, so valued. I'd be sitting alone on our couch, scrolling through these images of happy couples while the only sound in our apartment was the frantic clicking of Miles's keyboard from the home office. I felt this gnawing pressure, this voice in my head telling me this isn't right. A man who loves you wouldn't make you feel this alone. I tried to talk to him, I really did. One night I broke down and told him I felt like I was losing him. He stopped typing, took off his glasses, and looked at me with genuine concern. He told me about his father. His dad had been a project manager, and a single oversight, one missed detail on a major construction job, led to a catastrophic failure. It ruined his dad's career, his reputation, everything. Miles looked me dead in the eye and said, "Jade, I can't fail, I just can't. This isn't just about ambition. It's about making sure I'm not him, it's about being dependable." I remember nodding, feeling a pang of sympathy, but in the back of my mind, all I could think was, what about being dependable for me? I heard his words, but I didn't truly listen. I just saw it as another excuse, another way his work was more important than us. The breaking point came this Tuesday. It was the night before his final presentation for the White Whale project, the culmination of months of his life, all boiling down to a single meeting the next morning. Our apartment had transformed into his mission control. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and nervous energy. The dining table where we used to eat together was completely invisible under stacks of binders, charts, and what looked like architectural blueprints. He'd been awake for what felt like 48 hours straight, fueled by caffeine and a terrifying level of adrenaline that made his movements jerky and his eyes seem hollow. I tried to be the supportive girlfriend, I really did. I made him his favorite dinner, a rich, cheesy lasagna that usually made him melt. I brought it to the dining table, a small offering of peace and normalcy. He took 3 distracted bites, his eyes never leaving the screen, and then pushed the plate aside. Thanks, babe, this is great, but I really need to run through these numbers one more time. He didn't even look up. I just stood there, holding his half-eaten plate, feeling the warmth of the ceramic against my cold hands. I wasn't his partner. I was a low-priority notification he could just swipe away. The resentment that had been simmering for months began to boil over into a quiet, cold fury. Later, around 2 a.m., I found him passed out at his desk, his head resting on a thick, spiral-bound document. That was it, the presentation Bible, the physical manifestation of my rival, the thing that had stolen him from me. Next to it, gleaming under the desk lamp, was a small, sleek USB drive, the one he always used for final versions. And in that moment, watching him sleep, a plan bloomed in my mind, fully formed and in my sleep-deprived, emotionally starved state, utterly brilliant. I wasn't trying to sabotage his career. I swear to God, that was never the intention. In my head, it was a harmless prank, a dramatic gesture to make a point. I pictured the morning with perfect clarity. He'd wake up unable to find his precious files. A brief, controlled panic would set in. He'd be forced to turn to me, his voice laced with desperation. And then, like a magician, I would produce the documents from their hiding place. He'd be flooded with a tidal wave of relief and gratitude. He would finally see me, really see me, and pull me into a hug, burying his face in my hair. "You're right," he'd whisper. "I've been so focused on this, I almost lost what's most important." "I'm so sorry." He would promise to make it up to me to change. It was a perfect little movie scene in my head. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I gently slid the heavy binder off the desk. It felt heavier than just paper. It felt like the weight of the last 6 months. I picked up the USB drive, its cool metal a stark contrast to my clammy skin. I tiptoed into our bedroom, wincing at every creak in the floorboards. In the back of the closet was an old, hardshell suitcase from a trip we took to Italy years ago, back when we were happy. I unzipped it, the sound deafening in the silent apartment. I placed the binder and the USB drive inside, nestled them between some old sweaters, and zipped it shut. I shoved the suitcase back into the deepest, darkest corner of the closet, behind a row of winter coats. I got back into bed, my mind racing with anticipation for the morning's performance. I wasn't a villain, I was a director, setting the stage for our relationship's grand reconciliation. The next morning, I woke up before him, my stomach a knot of nervous excitement. I made coffee, pretending to be absorbed in my phone as I waited for the show to begin. Just before 7 a.m., Miles stumbled out of the office, rubbing his eyes. "Morning," he grunted, heading straight for the coffee pot. He took a long sip and then the search began. At first, it was exactly as I'd pictured, a low-grade, shuffling confusion. He patted down the surface of the dining table, then checked the floor around his desk. "Huh, that's weird," he mumbled to himself. He started opening and closing drawers, the pace of his movements quickening slightly. I kept my face neutral, offering a placid, "Everything okay?" "I can't find the binder or the drive," he said, a flicker of real concern in his voice. "I know I left them right on the desk." This was my cue. I put my phone down, ready to feign innocence and then guide him toward the discovery. But something was wrong. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't getting frantic. After a few more minutes of methodical searching, checking his briefcase, looking behind the couch, he just stopped. He stood in the middle of the living room, completely still, and his eyes slowly drifted over to me. He didn't look angry, he didn't look scared. He just looked analytical, like he was observing a variable in an experiment that had gone wrong. He stared at me for what felt like an eternity, a long, silent 10 seconds where the only sound was the drip of the coffee machine. The air grew thick and cold. The smug confidence I felt just moments before evaporated, replaced by a creeping dread. I felt my fake smile start to tremble at the corners. "Jade," he said, his voice eerily calm, "did you move my presentation?" I tried to play dumb. "What, of course not, why would I do that?" I even managed a little laugh, but it sounded brittle and fake even to my own ears. He didn't press the issue. He just held my gaze for another couple of seconds, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he turned, walked back to his laptop, and opened it. He clicked the mouse a few times. I heard the faint chime of a notification. He looked up from the screen, his eyes locking onto mine again, and then he delivered the line that shattered my entire fantasy. Jade, I have backups of everything in Dropbox, he said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. It's all in the cloud. He paused, letting the words hang in the air between us. Then he delivered the final, devastating blow. Maybe you should find something to do with your time, too. He snapped the laptop shut, slid it into his briefcase, and walked to the door. He put on his shoes, straightened his tie in the hallway mirror, and left for his meeting. He didn't look back, not once. The click of the front door shutting echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen in the kitchen, his words replaying in my head. Maybe you should find something to do with your time, too. It wasn't an accusation. It was a diagnosis, a cold, clinical assessment of my pathetic little scheme. The humiliation washed over me in a hot, sickening wave. I wasn't his partner. I was a nuisance, a bug in his operating system that he'd just effortlessly bypassed. My first instinct was rage. How dare he? How dare he be so prepared, so calm, so dismissive? I grabbed my phone and started typing, my thumbs flying across the screen. I sent him a barrage of texts, each one more frantic than the last. It was a joke, Miles. Can't you take a joke? You're the one who's never here. You pushed me to this. I can't believe you'd speak to me like that after everything I do for you. Are you really going to let your stupid job destroy us? The messages were all delivered. None were read. The single gray checkmark on WhatsApp became my new form of torture. I needed validation. I needed someone to tell me I was right, that his reaction was insane. I called Kira, my voice choked with a mixture of tears and indignation. I recounted the morning's events, carefully framing myself as the long-suffering girlfriend who had been pushed to a desperate, but ultimately harmless, act. I painted his response as monstrously cold and unfeeling. I waited for her to join my chorus of outrage, but she didn't. There was a long, uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line. Kira, are you there? I asked, my voice wavering. Yeah, I'm here, she finally said, her tone hesitant. Jade, let me get this straight. The night before the biggest meeting of his career, you intentionally hid all of his work to what? To make him panic. No, to make him see me, I insisted, my voice rising. To make him realize his priorities are screwed up. His priorities, Kira's voice sharpened, losing its usual softness. His priority is the career he's been building for a decade, the one that pays the rent on that beautiful apartment you live in. You didn't just play a prank, Jade. You took a direct shot at the most important thing in his life besides you, and honestly, what you did was terrifying. It's not just a joke. It's a massive breach of trust. Her words hit me harder than Miles's had. I mumbled something about her not understanding and hung up. The walls of the apartment suddenly felt like they were closing in. Miles came home late that night. I had rehearsed 100 speeches, vacillating between angry ultimatums and tearful apologies, but I never got to deliver any of them. He walked in, his face weary but resolute, and began to pack a bag. He didn't shout, he didn't even seem angry anymore, he just seemed done. I can't do this, Jade, he said quietly, pulling shirts from his dresser. It's not about the files, I had backups for my backups. It's about the fact that you saw I was stressed, that you knew how much this meant to me, and your first instinct was to try and leverage that to get what you wanted. You were willing to risk my career, my reputation, the thing I told you my father lost to prove a point. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of a profound, bottomless disappointment. I can't trust you anymore. How can I build a life with someone I can't trust not to burn it all down when they feel neglected? He zipped up his suitcase and walked out of the bedroom. He walked out of the apartment, he walked out of my life, and this time I knew he wasn't coming back. It's been a week of suffocating silence in an apartment that suddenly feels cavernously empty. Every morning I wake up expecting to hear the sound of his shower or the whir of the coffee grinder, and every morning I'm met with nothing. The silence is a physical presence, a constant reminder of the space he used to occupy. I'm trying to project an aura of indifference. When my friend Chloe called yesterday to check in, I put on my bravest, most nonchalant voice. Oh, we're done, I said, trying to sound breezy like I was talking about a TV show I'd gotten bored of. Honestly, it's for the best. I deserve someone who actually wants to spend time with me, not someone who's married to their laptop. Who needs a guy who cares more about a PowerPoint than his own girlfriend? I even managed a laugh. Good riddance, his loss, right? Chloe murmured some vague words of support, and I hung up feeling a fleeting sense of victory, of having won the breakup narrative. I am the strong one, I am the one who is better off. I repeated it to myself like a mantra as I walked through the quiet apartment. I'm better off, I'm better off. But the performance always ends. The audience is gone, and I'm left alone in the wreckage. Tonight, I was trying to find a blanket in the hall closet when my hand brushed against something hard and unfamiliar. It was the old suitcase, the one from our trip to Italy, the one I'd used as a hiding place. My breath caught in my throat. I dragged it out into the dim light of the hallway, my heart thudding against my ribs. I don't know why, but I had to open it. My fingers fumbled with the zipper. There they were. The thick spiral-bound presentation and the small, silver USB drive lying on a bed of old sweaters. They looked inert, harmless, just paper and plastic, but seeing them felt like a punch to the gut. This was the murder weapon. This was the evidence of my spectacular, relationship-ending stupidity. He hadn't even bothered to ask for them back. They were that insignificant to his success, and I was that insignificant to his life. I picked up the binder. On the cover page, in a clean, professional font, was the project title and below it his name, Miles Carter. My fingers traced the letters of his name, a name I used to say 100 times a day. The tough, angry facade I'd been maintaining for a week crumbled into dust. A single hot tear fell from my eye, then another, splashing onto the glossy cover page. They blurred the ink of his name, the name of the man I drove away because I was too insecure to believe I was more important than a stack of paper. And the most heartbreaking part, I had just proven him right.